The doors to the courtroom slam shut, and for the first time, the Brown family isn't fighting behind closed doors. They're doing it under oath, and every secret, betrayal, and lie is about to be revealed to the world. And as Kody takes the stand, one question stands out above all others: who really broke up this family? Stay with me if you think you already know the truth. What happens next changes everything, and by the end, I want to know whose side you're really on. It feels like the air in the courtroom is too thick, almost suffocating, as if the walls have been holding in years of stress and are now ready to let it all out at once. The wooden benches creak under the weight of the quiet people watching, and reporters sit with their pens ready to write in their notebooks. Everyone's eyes are on the front of the room, where 5 lives are about to collide in a way they've never done before. Kody Brown is sitting at the center table with his back straight, jaw clenched, and fingers tapping in a way that shows how nervous he is. People used to see him on TV as a strong father figure, but not anymore. He looks trapped today. Christine, Janelle, and Meri are sitting across from him, no longer together and no longer quiet. Robyn is next to Kody, holding his arm a little too tightly. Her eyes are already glassy with emotion. When the judge walks in, everyone stands up at the same time. The sound echoes sharply, like a warning that this is no longer a family fight, it's a legal battle. The case looks easy on paper, but it's terrible in real life. It's about money manipulation, emotional neglect, and a question that goes deeper than any legal argument. Did Kody's leadership of the family go from complicated to controlling? The first person to be called is Christine. She walks to the stand with a calmness that seems almost strange. But her hands shake a little as she sits, and her fingers grip the edge of the witness box as if to steady herself. She takes a deep breath and looks at Kody for a second, but he looks away. That says more than words ever could. The lawyer speaks to her softly at first, with a smooth voice that sounds almost sympathetic. Christine, can you tell me what life was like for the family over the past few years? She stops, not because she doesn't know the answer, but because she has too many. It felt, she starts slowly, like I was disappearing, like no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. And finally, I understood that it wasn't me who was changing. It was him. A murmur goes through the courtroom. Kody moves around in his seat, and his jaw gets even tighter. Christine keeps talking, and with each word, her voice gets stronger. She talks about missed anniversaries, broken promises, and a growing feeling that the family was no longer equal, that some voices were more important than others. For a split second, her eyes dart over to Robyn, and everyone sees it. The lawyer leans in a little bit. When did you first notice that something was wrong? Christine laughs softly, almost bitterly. When decisions stopped being talks and started being news. The words hit hard. Janelle nods slightly across the room, her lips pressed together as if she is trying to keep her own thoughts from flooding out. Meri looks straight ahead, and you can't tell what she's thinking, but her eyes shine with something. Maybe regret. Or understanding. Kody finally responds. He mutters, "That's not true," just loud enough for people nearby to hear. The judge's gavel hits hard. "Mr. Brown, you will not speak, but the harm has already been done." Christine turns a little, just enough to show that she heard him, and her face is different now, not sad, not even angry, but clear. "I stayed," she says, her voice steady, "because I believed in the family. But I stopped seeing it." The lawyer nods and then turns around. "Christine, did someone make financial decisions without your permission?" The room gets stiff again. This is where things start to change. Christine thinks about it for a second. Yes. Kody's head snaps up. Money was moved, she says. Properties were prioritized. And not everyone was involved in those decisions. Robyn looks down now, and her grip on Kody's arm gets stronger. The lawyer keeps pushing. "Can you be more specific about what you mean?" Christine takes a deep breath and lets it out slowly. Money that we all gave to the family only helped some parts of it, and when I asked about it, they said I didn't see the whole picture. There is a heavy silence that follows, because everyone knows exactly what she's saying. The lawyer takes a small step back to let the weight of her words sink in before she strikes again. Christine, who made those last choices? There is a break. A long one. Christine looks straight ahead. Then, slowly, she says, Kody did, but not by himself. Everyone looks. Kody even looks confused for a moment. The lawyer raises an eyebrow. Not alone? Christine finally looks right at Robyn. At that moment, the courtroom doesn't just feel tense, it feels like it's going to blow up. Robyn's eyes get bigger and her lips part as if she wants to say something, but nothing comes out. Kody looks back and forth between them, his face showing disbelief. The judge leans forward a little, feeling the change. Christine, the lawyer says carefully, are you saying that someone else had an effect on those choices? This time, Christine doesn't hesitate. Yes, somewhere in the room, a sharp breath can be heard. Kody shakes his head. This is crazy. Mr. Hay Brown, the judge, warns again. But Christine doesn't even look at him now. She can't stop thinking about it. I didn't feel like some of the decisions came from the family, she says softly. They felt directed. The word stays. Directed. It's not a charge. It's something more serious, more dangerous. The courtroom feels even colder as the clerk calls Janelle Brown to the stand, and unlike Christine's composed entrance, Janelle walks forward with a quiet heaviness, as if every step carries years of unspoken truth that she can no longer hold back. Her expression calm but distant. Her eyes. Avoiding Kody at first, until she finally settles into the witness chair and exhales slowly, the kind of breath that signals not nervousness, but release, as though she has already made peace with what she is about to say, and the attorney approaches her with a different tone now. Less gentle, more direct, knowing that what comes next could either support Christine's claims or shatter them entirely, and as Janelle raises her hand and swears to tell the truth, the silence in the courtroom becomes almost unbearable, every spectator leaning forward, every camera lens fixed, waiting for her. First words, and when she finally speaks, her voice is steady but carries an undercurrent of something deeper, something unresolved. I didn't think it would come to this, she says, glancing briefly at the judge before looking straight ahead. But I also didn't think I would ever feel like a stranger in my own family, and the words land with a quiet intensity, not explosive like Christine's, but piercing in a way that settles into the bones of everyone listening. And the attorney nods, pacing slowly in front of her. Janelle, can you explain what you mean by that? That means decisions started being made without me, conversations stopped including me, and eventually it felt like my role was reduced to supporting something I no longer had a voice in. And across the room, Kody shifts again, clearly annoyed now, his fingers tapping faster, his posture defensive, while Robyn's eyes stay locked on Janelle with a mix of disbelief and quiet panic, and the attorney takes a step closer, sensing the momentum building. Were these changes sudden, or did they happen over time? At first, it was gradual. Small things that were easy to ignore, but then it became patterns, decisions about money, property, and where time and attention were being spent, and those patterns stopped including all of us equally, and a murmur spreads again through the courtroom, softer this time, but heavier. Because this is no longer just emotional testimony, it is aligning with something more concrete, something that hints at a deeper imbalance. The attorney glances briefly at the judge before continuing, let's talk about finances, Janelle. Were you aware of how family funds were being allocated in recent years? And for the first time, Janelle's composure cracks just slightly, her lips pressing together before she answers, I thought I was, she says, until I realized I wasn't being told everything, and Kody lets out a sharp breath, shaking his head as if trying to physically reject what he's hearing. But the judge's presence keeps him silent, and Janelle continues, her voice gaining strength now. There were decisions made, large ones, that affected all of us. But not all of us were part of those decisions, and when I asked questions, I was made to feel like I was being difficult, like I was. disrupting something I was supposed to just trust, and the attorney's eyes narrow slightly. And did you trust it? And Janelle lets out a small, almost humorless laugh. I wanted to, she admits, but trust requires transparency, and that stopped happening. The tension sharpens right away, like a wire being pulled too tight. Robyn shifts uncomfortably, her gaze dropping to her hands. Kody finally leans forward, unable to hold back any longer. That's not fair, he says, his voice low but intense. You knew what was going on. But Janelle doesn't look at him this time. I knew what I was told, she says, and the difference hits harder than anything else that has been said so far. The courtroom seems to hold its breath again as the attorney steps closer, lowering his voice just enough to draw everyone in. Janelle, who was primarily responsible for communicating these financial decisions. And there's a pause, a long one, and for a moment it seems like she might soften, like she might choose her words carefully to avoid what's coming. But instead, she looks up, her expression clear, resolute. Kody was the one who spoke, she says, but the direction didn't always feel like his. And the room shifts instantly, the same implication Christine made now echoing again, louder, harder to ignore, and the attorney presses, "What do you mean by that?" Janelle exhales slowly, her gaze finally moving toward Robyn. There were times, she says, when it felt like decisions were already made before they were presented to us, and those decisions always seemed to align with one household more than the others. Robyn's head lifts sharply, her eyes wide. That's not true, she whispers, almost pleading, but the words barely leave her lips before the judge's gavel taps lightly, a warning without needing to be spoken. Janelle continues, her voice steady, but now carrying something heavier, something more emotional. I'm not saying it was intentional, she adds, but the outcome was always the same. Some of us were sacrificing more, and some of us were gaining more. The attorney nods slowly, letting the weight of that settle before asking the question that changes everything. Janelle, did you ever confront Kody about this imbalance? And this time, she loses her cool, not in a big way, but enough that her eyes shine and her voice gets a little tighter. Yes, she says, and that's when everything changed. The courtroom leans in again, straining to hear what comes next, and the lawyer's voice softens. What happened? And Janelle swallows, her hands gripping the edge of the stand. I was told, she begins, her voice quieter now, that if I didn't trust him, then I didn't trust the family. And if I didn't trust the family, then maybe I didn't belong in it anymore. And the words hit like a shockwave, not loud, not explosive, but devastating in their implication. And across the room, Meri's head lowers slightly, as if recognizing something painfully familiar in that statement. Wow. Christine closes her eyes briefly, her expression tightening with emotion, and Kody sits frozen, his face unreadable for the first time, as if even he didn't expect that moment to be brought into the open. And just when it feels like the truth has finally settled into the room, Janelle reveals something that makes the entire courtroom question everything they thought they understood. The attorney takes a slow step forward, his voice careful but firm. Janelle, after that conversation, did anything change? Yes, she says, and she nods, a small, almost imperceptible movement. I stopped asking questions. The simplicity of that answer is what makes it so powerful and so unsettling. The attorney tilts his head slightly and asks, why? And Janelle looks straight ahead, her voice steady again, but now carrying a quiet resignation. Because I realized the answers didn't matter anymore, the decisions were already made, and a silence follows that feels heavier than anything before it. Because now, it's no longer about misunderstanding or miscommunication. It's about control, about power, about a system that may have been broken long before anyone admitted it. And the attorney pauses, letting that settle before delivering one final question. The kind that doesn't just seek an answer, but exposes something deeper. Janelle, do you believe this was a family or something else entirely? And for the first time since she took the stand, Janelle hesitates. her eyes flickering slightly, her expression shifting as if she's weighing not just the truth, but the impact of saying it out loud. And then, slowly, she speaks. I think it started as a family, she says, but somewhere along the way, it became something else, and the courtroom seems to exhale all at once, the tension shifting into something sharper, more defined, as if the lines have finally been drawn, and as Janelle steps down from the stand, her gaze briefly meets Christine's, a silent understanding passing. Between them, while Kody stares straight ahead, unmoving, and Robyn sits frozen beside him, her expression caught somewhere between denial and realization, and just as it seems like the weight of Janelle's testimony might be enough to carry the case forward, the judge calls for a brief recess. But not before the attorney announces the next witness, and the name alone is enough to send a ripple through the entire room, Meri Brown, and as the courtroom doors begin to open and the tension momentarily breaks, one question lingers heavier than ever. What does Meri know that the others haven't said yet, and why has she stayed silent until the courtroom feels different after the recess, heavier, quieter, as if Janelle's words are still echoing through the walls, refusing to settle, and when the clerk finally calls Meri Brown to the stand, the shift in energy is immediate because, unlike Christine's quiet strength or Janelle's grounded honesty, Meri carries something far more unpredictable. Years of silence, loyalty, regret, and something that no one in the room can quite define. And as she walks forward, her steps are slow but deliberate, her face composed yet distant, like someone who has rehearsed this moment 1,000 times but still isn't sure how it will end. And when she takes the oath and sits down, she doesn't look at anyone at first. Not Kody, not Robyn, not even Christine or Janelle. She just stares straight ahead as if preparing herself to finally say the thing she has buried for far too long, and the attorney approaches carefully, aware that this testimony could either fracture the case or solidify everything that has been hinted at so far. Meri, he begins, his tone calm but intentional. You've been part of this family longer than anyone else. Here, can you describe how things have changed over time? And for a moment, Meri doesn't answer, her lips pressing together, her eyes blinking slowly as if holding back something emotional, and then she exhales, a long, controlled breath. It didn't happen all at once, she says quietly, her voice softer than expected but steady. It was layers, small changes that didn't feel important at the time, but eventually those layers built up into something I didn't recognize anymore, and the courtroom listens closely. The stillness now filled with anticipation, because Meri's perspective is different. She has stayed when others left. She has endured when others walked away, and that alone makes her words carry a different kind of weight, and the attorney nods slightly, encouraging her to continue. What kind of changes? He asks, and Meri's gaze lowers briefly before she answers. Distance, she says, not just physical, but emotional. Conversations became shorter, visits became less frequent, and eventually it felt like I was on the outside of something I helped build, and across the room, Kody shifts again. But this time there's something else in his expression, not just frustration, but discomfort. As if Meri's words are touching something he doesn't want exposed, and the attorney takes a step closer, his voice lowering just slightly. Meri, did you feel excluded from family decisions? Yes, she says, but not in a way that was obvious at first. It was subtle. Decisions would be presented as already made, and I would be expected to agree, not contribute. The pattern is now clear. Christine said it, Janelle confirmed it, and now Meri is backing it up. But there is something more in her tone, something unresolved, something personal, and the attorney senses it. Did you ever speak up about it? Why did you stay? He asks, and Meri lets out a small, almost fragile laugh. I tried, she admits, but every time I did, it turned into something else, something about loyalty, about trust, about not causing division. The word division hangs in the air, heavy and ironic, given where they are now. The attorney pauses before asking the question that starts to peel back the deeper layer of her silence. Meri, why did you stay? And this time, the hesitation is longer, more visible. Her fingers tightening slightly against the edge of the stand, her eyes finally lifting not to the attorney, but to Kody. And for a brief second, there is something raw in that look. Something that speaks of history, of attachment, of something that never fully let go. Because I believed in him, she says softly, and I believed in what we were supposed to be. And Kody's expression shifts, just slightly, as if that answer lands somewhere deeper than the accusations. And Meri continues, her voice gaining a quiet strength. But believing in something doesn't make it real, and I think I held on to that belief longer than I should have. And the courtroom absorbs that in silence, the emotional weight of her words settling in a way that feels different from the others, less confrontational, more reflective, but no less powerful. And just when it seems like Meri's testimony is about to remain emotional rather than explosive, she reveals something that reframes everything said so far. The attorney leans in slightly, his voice careful. Meri, earlier testimony suggested that decisions within the family may have been influenced by more than one person. Did you observe anything like that? And for the first time, Meri's calmness breaks, not in a big way, but enough for everyone to see. Her jaw tightens and her eyes narrow just a little, as if she's finally facing something she's been avoiding naming. She takes a breath before answering, yes, her voice stronger now, I did, and the room shifts right away, the tension rising again. The lawyer carefully follows up with, can you explain what you mean? Meri doesn't look away this time, her gaze is steady and her tone is controlled. There were conversations, she says, that didn't include everyone, but somehow the outcomes of those conversations affected everyone, and over time it became clear that certain voices carried more weight than others. Again, her eyes move, not dramatically, not accusingly, but enough to make it clear, toward Robyn, and Robyn's reaction is immediate. Her posture stiffens and her expression tightens as if she's trying to hold something together that is starting to come apart. That's not fair, she says under her breath, barely audible, but the words hang there anyway, and the judge glances in her direction but says nothing, allowing the testimony to continue. The attorney steps forward again, his voice now more direct. Meri, are you saying that Robyn had influence over Kody's decisions? And the question lands like a spark in a room already filled with tension, and for a moment, it feels like time slows. Every eye locked on Meri as she decides how to answer, and when she finally speaks, her words are measured, deliberate, I'm saying, she begins, that Kody listened to her in a way he didn't listen to the rest of us, and the impact is immediate, Kody's head snapping slightly in her direction, Robyn's eyes widening again, and the courtroom erupting into a low murmur that the judge quickly silences with a firm strike of the gavel, and Meri continues, her voice steady. Despite the reaction, it wasn't always obvious, and I don't think it was always intentional, but it was consistent, and the attorney nods slowly, letting that settle before asking the question that pushes everything to the edge. Meri, do you believe that influence affected financial decisions within the family? And this time, she doesn't hesitate. Yes, she says, and the certainty in her voice is what makes it so powerful, so undeniable, and the courtroom falls into a deeper silence than before, because now the pattern has been confirmed by all three women. Not just emotionally, but structurally. And Kody finally reacts again, his voice low but strained. This is being twisted, he says, shaking his head. You're all making it sound like something it wasn't. But Meri turns to him now, fully, her expression calm but firm. Then tell them what it was, she says quietly, and for the first time. Kody has no immediate response, his mouth opening slightly before closing again, his gaze shifting away, and that silence speaks louder than anything he could have said, and just when it feels like the truth has reached its peak, Meri delivers one final revelation that changes the emotional core of the entire case. The attorney steps back slightly, his voice softer now. Meri, looking back, do you believe this family could have been saved? And the question hangs there, heavy, almost unfair, and Meri's expression shifts again. the strength giving way to something more vulnerable, more human, and she takes a slow breath before answering, "I think it could have been," she says, her voice quieter now, but not the way it was. And the courtroom listens in complete silence. It would have required honesty, equality, and a willingness to hear everyone, not just the person standing closest to you, and the meaning is clear, unmistakable, and as she steps down from the stand, her eyes linger for just a moment on Kody. Not with anger, not even with blame, but with something far more complicated, acceptance, perhaps, or closure, and as she returns to her seat, the room feels different again. Not lighter, but clearer, as if the pieces are finally forming a picture no one can ignore, and just as the judge prepares to call. The next phase of the trial, the defense attorney rises, his expression sharp, his tone controlled but charged with intent, and he announces that Kody Brown will take the stand next, and the reaction is immediate, a ripple of tension moving through the courtroom because this is the moment. Everything has been building toward the moment where accusations meet defense, where perception meets explanation, where the man at the center of it all finally speaks under oath. And as Kody slowly rises from his seat, adjusting his jacket, his expression shifting from defensive to determined. One question settles heavily over the entire room. Will he finally tell the truth or reveal something no one is prepared to hear? What? The moment Kody Brown stands up to take the witness stand, the entire courtroom seems to tighten around him, like every breath, every glance, every unspoken accusation is closing in at once, and for the first time since this trial began, the man who once controlled the narrative is now walking directly into it, his steps slower than before, his usual confidence replaced with something far more guarded, and as he raises his hand to swear the oath, there's a visible flicker of hesitation, so brief that most would miss it, but in a room this tense, even the smallest crack feels enormous. And when he finally sits, he adjusts his posture quickly, straightening his shoulders as if trying to reclaim authority, but the energy has already shifted. Because now he isn't the leader of a family, he's a witness under scrutiny, and the defense attorney approaches first, offering him a small nod of reassurance before beginning, his tone calm, structured, almost protective. "Kody, you've heard the testimony presented so far. How would you describe your role within the family during the time in question?" Kody exhales through his nose and tightens his jaw a little before saying, "I was responsible for keeping the family together," his voice firm but edged with frustration. "I had to make decisions that would benefit everyone, even when those decisions weren't easy." The words sound controlled, almost rehearsed, but there's an undercurrent there, something defensive that doesn't quite hide the pressure he's under. The attorney nods and walks slowly. "And do you believe you did that fairly?" Kody leans forward a little and clasps his hands. "I did the best I could with what I had," he says, "but it's easy to sit here now and judge those decisions without seeing the whole picture." A few subtle reactions ripple through the courtroom. Christine shifts in her seat, Janelle's gaze hardens, Meri looks down, and Robyn watches him closely, as if willing him to hold everything together. The defense attorney continues, guiding him carefully. There have been claims that certain decisions were made without full transparency, particularly financial ones. Can you address that? Kody's expression changes right away. "That's not true," he says more quickly this time. "Nothing was hidden, not on purpose. Sometimes things moved quickly, and not everyone was involved in every conversation, but that doesn't mean there was some kind of manipulation." The word manipulation hangs in the air, heavy and defensive, and the attorney nods again. "So you're saying all decisions were made with the family's best interest in mind?" Kody answers right away, "Yes, but there is a little tension in his voice now, a strain that wasn't there before." It doesn't go unnoticed, and just when it seems like Kody might be able to keep control of his story, the cross-examination starts, and everything starts to fall apart. The opposing attorney stands up, and his presence changes the tone of the room right away, making it sharper, more direct, and less forgiving. He walks slowly toward Kody, his eyes fixed on him, and says, "Mr. Brown," he starts. His voice calm but with an edge. "You've said you're a leader trying to keep a family together, but isn't it true that more than one member of that family felt left out of your decisions?" "They may have felt that way," Kody says carefully, "but feelings don't always reflect reality." The attorney raises an eyebrow and says, "Then let's talk about reality." He steps closer and asks, "Did you or did you not make financial decisions that mainly helped one household over the others?" Kody's jaw tightens again, and he says firmly, "No, that's a misrepresentation. The lawyer doesn't back down, though. So you're saying there was no imbalance?" Kody leans forward again and raises his voice just a little. "I'm saying that every decision had a reason behind it, circumstances, needs, timing. It wasn't favoritism." The tension in the room rises, and the air feels thinner and heavier. The attorney pauses for just long enough for that answer to sink in before asking the next question, and those reasons, were they influenced by anyone else? And the room goes quiet right away. Everyone's eyes shift, some to Kody and some to Robyn. Kody hesitates for a split second, but it's enough, it's clear, and then he shakes his head and says, "No," but this time he sounds less sure, and the attorney moves closer, lowering his voice and making it more clear. "Not even by your legal wife, Robyn?" The effect is immediate. Robyn stiffens, her eyes widen, and Kody's response is sharper than before. "No," he says again. More forcefully, Robyn didn't control anything. But the way he says it, too quickly, too defensively, raises more questions than it answers. The attorney takes advantage of the moment and asks, "Did she advise you?" Kody hesitates again, his eyes flicking briefly toward Robyn before returning forward. "We talked," he admits, like any couple would, and the attorney nods slightly. "And did those conversations affect your decisions?" The pause is now longer and heavier, and the courtroom leans into it, waiting. When Kody finally speaks, his voice is softer. "Maybe," he says, "but that doesn't mean she was making the decisions." A ripple goes through the room because that one word, maybe, opens something that can't be easily closed. Just as the pressure reaches its peak, Kody is faced with a moment he can't explain away. The attorney reaches down to the table and lifts a document, holding it up just enough for the judge to see before turning it slightly toward Kody. "Do you know about this financial record, Brown?" Kody's eyes narrow as he looks at it, and his expression changes slightly. "It looks like one of our property documents," he says cautiously. The lawyer nods and says, "Correct?" And according to this, a significant portion of shared family funds was allocated to a property solely under Robyn's name. Can you explain that? Then there is an immediate, suffocating silence, and for the first time, Kody loses his composure. His mouth opens and closes again, and his gaze shifts, looking for something, anything. Robyn's hand tightens around the edge of the table, and her breathing becomes noticeably uneven. Finally, Kody speaks, but his voice is not as firm as it was before. That was a strategic decision," he says, but the words feel empty, even to himself. The attorney steps closer, and his voice cuts through the tension. "Strategic for who?" And the question hits like a punch, direct and unavoidable. Kody's anger finally breaks through. "For the family," he says, his voice rising. "Everything I did was for the family." But the repetition no longer sounds authoritative, it sounds like defense, like justification, like something falling apart in real time. The lawyer doesn't let up. Then why weren't all members of the family included in that ownership? And Kody's silence this time is louder than any answer. His gaze drops, his shoulders tense, and in that moment, the image of control he tried to keep up begins to fall apart, piece by piece. Just when it seems like Kody has reached his breaking point, the emotional truth finally comes out, and it changes everything. The attorney's voice softens a little, but the intensity stays the same. "Mr. Brown, do you really think you treated all of your wives the same?" And this time, there is no immediate answer, no quick defense, just a long, heavy pause, and when Kody finally speaks, his voice is quieter, Almost strained, I tried to, he says, and the honesty in that sentence, small as it is, hits harder than anything else he said, because it isn't a denial. It isn't a justification, it's an admission. Incomplete but undeniable, and the courtroom absorbs it in silence, the weight of it settling over everyone, and as he leans back slightly, his posture no longer rigid but tired, something in the room shifts again, not toward resolution, but toward clarity. Because now the story isn't just about accusations, it's about what was intended versus what actually happened. And as the attorney steps back, signaling the end of his questioning, the judge looks toward the defense for any redirect, but before anything more can be said, Robyn suddenly moves, her hand gripping Kody's arm as she leans forward slightly, her composure finally cracking, her voice trembling just enough to be heard. "You're not saying this right," she whispers, and the words, though quiet, echo louder than anything else in that moment, because they reveal something deeper, something more personal, something that no testimony alone could fully expose. And as the courtroom reacts, as the judge calls for order, as Kody turns toward her with a mixture of frustration and something almost like desperation, one question rises above everything else. If this is how. The truth is coming out now. What happens when Robyn finally takes the stand? The courtroom barely has time to settle after Kody's testimony before the next moment arrives, and when Robyn's name is called, the shift in atmosphere is immediate, heavier, more fragile. As if everyone understands that what comes next isn't just another perspective. It's the missing piece. The voice that has been hinted at, questioned, and quietly blamed without ever fully speaking. And as Robyn slowly stands, her movements are careful, almost hesitant, her hand briefly brushing against Kody's arm before she steps forward. And there's something in that small gesture that feels loaded. Protective yet uncertain, as though even she doesn't know what version of the truth she's about to reveal, and when she reaches the stand, her eyes are already glossy, her breathing measured but uneven, and as she takes the oath, her voice trembles just slightly, not enough to break, but enough to reveal the pressure building beneath the surface. And when she finally sits, she doesn't look at the others right away. Not Christine, not Janelle, not Meri, because facing them would mean confronting everything that has been said, everything that has been implied, and everything she has avoided. Saying until now, and the defense attorney approaches first, his tone softer, almost protective. "Robyn." He begins, "You've heard the testimony presented in this courtroom. How do you respond to the claim that you influenced family decisions in a way that created imbalance?" Of course. But did you influence those decisions? Robyn blinks slowly and exhales, her lips parting. When she speaks, her voice is quiet, emotional, and controlled. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she says, and the simplicity of that answer lands softly but not convincingly. And Robyn hesitates, her fingers tightening slightly against the edge of the stand. I talked to Kody," she admits. "We discussed things like any married couple would, but I never told him what to do." And across the room, Christine's expression shifts subtly, not surprised, not angry, but unconvinced, while Janelle watches with a steady, analytical gaze, and Meri looks down again. As if she's heard this explanation before, and the attorney continues, "Did you ever feel that your voice carried more weight than the others?" Robyn shakes her head quickly, almost without thinking, and says, "No." But there is a short pause before the word leaves her lips, which is just long enough to make the attorney doubt her. Then the opposing attorney stands up with a completely different energy, sharper, more precise, and less willing to accept emotional framing without substance. As he approaches, Robyn's posture stiffens, and her composure tightens as if she is bracing for impact. "Mrs. Brown," he says, his voice steady but firm, "you've said that you never meant to unfairly influence decisions, but intention and impact are not the same thing, are they?" And Robyn swallows, her gaze lowering briefly. "No," she admits quietly, and the attorney nods. "So let's talk about impact," he says. "Multiple witnesses have said that decisions within the family consistently aligned with your household's benefit. Can you explain that?" Robyn's breathing becomes more noticeable now. Her chest rises slightly as she searches for the right words. I didn't see it that way, she says. I thought we were all working toward the same goals. The attorney tilts his head slightly and says, and yet the outcomes suggest otherwise. The tension sharpens again, and the emotional layer collides directly with the factual one. Just as Robyn tries to hold on to her version of events, the questioning begins to expose the cracks she can no longer hide. Did you ever advocate for your household specifically during financial discussions? The lawyer asks, and Robyn takes longer to answer this time. Her eyes flick briefly to Kody before returning to the front. I spoke up when I thought it was necessary, she says carefully, and the lawyer steps closer. Necessary for who? And the question hits harder than she thought it would because it forces her to make a distinction she has been avoiding. For a moment, she doesn't answer, her lips pressed together, her composure slipping just a little. When she finally does speak, her voice is softer and more unsure. For my kids, she says, and the courtroom reacts in a subtle way, not with noise, but with a change in energy. That answer is honest, but it also confirms something deeper, something more complicated, and the attorney nods slowly. And do you believe the other members of the family didn't have similar needs? Of course they did. Robyn quickly shakes her head. I just wanted to make sure my kids were safe. Now the emotional layer is fully exposed. Her motivation is no longer abstract, but deeply personal, protective, and human. But the attorney doesn't back down. And in doing so, he continues, is it possible that those decisions, even unintentionally, created an imbalance? Robyn's eyes fill with tears, and her composure breaks even more. She takes a shaky breath before answering. Maybe, she whispers. That one word echoes through the courtroom just as strongly as Kody's earlier admission, because it doesn't deny, it acknowledges. The weight of that acknowledgement settles heavily over everyone present. Just when it seems like the truth has finally come out, Robyn reveals something even more emotional that changes how everything is seen. The attorney pauses and then asks one last question, his voice quieter now but no less intense. Robyn, did you ever feel that the structure of this family put you in a position where your voice would naturally carry more weight? And the question lingers, not accusatory but deeply probing, and Robyn's reaction is immediate. Her shoulders dropping slightly, her expression shifting from defensive to something more vulnerable, more reflective, and she takes a long breath before answering, yes, she says, her voice breaking. Just slightly, I did. And the courtroom stills completely, because this is the first time she has openly acknowledged that dynamic, and she continues, her words coming more freely now, as if something has finally been released. I didn't ask for it, but I could feel it, the way conversations would turn, the way decisions would lean, and I didn't always stop it, and the honesty in her voice is undeniable now. Raw and unfiltered, and Christine looks down briefly, her expression tightening, while Janelle's gaze softens just slightly, not in agreement, but in understanding, and even Meri lifts her eyes, watching Robyn with a different kind of attention, and Kody sits beside her, completely still, as if hearing this for the first time in a way he never allowed himself to before, and Robyn continues, her voice trembling but steady, I thought I was helping. I thought I was. Protecting what we had, but maybe I was holding on to something that was already breaking. And the courtroom absorbs her words in silence, the emotional truth now layered over the factual one, creating something far more complex than simple blame, and as she finishes, her gaze finally lifts. Not toward Kody, but toward the other women, and for a brief moment, there is something unspoken passing between them. Not forgiveness, not resolution, but recognition. And as the attorney steps back, signaling the end of her testimony, the room feels different again. Not lighter, but clearer, as if the final pieces of a puzzle are finally visible, even if they don't fit perfectly. And just as the judge prepares to move forward, a sudden movement breaks the stillness. Christine shifts forward in her seat, her expression sharper now, more determined than before, and she leans toward her. Attorney, whispering something urgently, and within seconds, The attorney rises, his voice cutting through the silence. Your Honor, in light of this testimony, we request to recall a witness, and the judge raises an eyebrow. On what grounds? The lawyer doesn't hesitate when he says, new context that directly impacts prior statements. The courtroom gets tense again, and the tension snaps back into place. Just when it seemed like everything had been said, something new is about to come up that could change not just the outcome of the case, but the whole understanding of what really happened in that family. As the judge thinks about the request, one question hangs heavier than ever. What truth hasn't been told yet, and who is about to reveal it?